J Squad.
We gotta find now what do we do? That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find the program. That's the first clue. We gotta find. That's the first clue. That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find the program. Find that's the first clue. We gotta find that's the first clue. That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find the program. Find that's the first clue. We gotta find that's the first clue. That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find the program. Find that's the first clue. We gotta find that's the first clue. That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find the program. Find that's the first clue. We gotta find that's the first clue. That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find the program. Find that's the first clue. We gotta find that's the first clue. That's the first clue. Find the program. Find that's the first clue. We gotta find that's the first clue. That's the first clue.
RFC After Hours is a live trending issues and entertainment broadcast with co-host Bowblax, broadcasted every weekday, Monday through Friday, starting at 6:30 p.m. Central. The show is for entertainment purposes only. All chat messages and donations read are the words of the original messenger, and certain viewpoints expressed do not reflect that of myself or Bowblax.
in my job, you need to find out where people are, what an address is. I doxed him. What are you going to do about it?
I don't know. His dox is in the hands of dangerous people. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the After Hours. My name is AugieRFC, as you probably should know by now. Augie, shut the fuck up and get into the stories. Well, fair enough.
He said he just said he doxes people all the time. I mean, he doxed Clown when he was AFK for the internet for a week, so...
Everyone gets a day, but for some reason the autists get a whole week. What is this?
What do you mean fund it? Represent yourself.
One of the first things that you said in one of your first videos was that you were talking to someone called Becky Boop.
Becky fucking Boop!
Sorry, dude. She's a cunt for that. Your girlfriend's a cunt, dude. That's just dumb.
Anyway.
While we're waiting for him to unmute or whatever, can I just say that this fucking show needs better branding? It looks so fucking ugly.
You need to put that dog down, dude.
I don't think he has to put it down.
Jesus!
That motherfucking there.
Did they pull out the cord? What the hell happened?
Dude, I will say, in comparison to like exposing fucking Susie Liu to exposing Keemstar, that fucking guy is just leagues above in terms of assholery and like holy fucking shit. Yeah, but you said you had the intent to harass Just Destiny, so wouldn't that make your dox illegal?
I said that I wanted to harass him, but
He never said he never
That's
said he...
intent. That's the same as that means intent, Keem.
Oh, whatever. I guess I'm guilty.
Yeah, because all they have is inside your fucking ass.
I'm here to date your 6-year-old.
No.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night's After Hours. My name is AugieRFC, and tonight we've got an epic show planned for you guys tonight. Not really. I'm just messing around. We got a very light show with a very interesting and heavy headliner topic. The first one we're going to be covering tonight involves a secret. Well, not really secret, but a cult, a satanic child sex trafficking cult. That is now basically, it's been uncovered to be tied to the CIA. Like CIA agents were a part of this cult. We're going to be taking a look at a summary about the situation, as well as potentially a documentary that I have loaded up on the situation. You know, we cover a lot of crazy shit in YouTube standards. You know, shit like the I'm Alex case, or we've gone into deeper cases, and a lot of the times I find myself asking the question, why is nobody talking about this, and why is nothing being done? This is like a little bit of a grim reminder, snap back to reality, that this doesn't even begin to match with the fucked up and twisted shit that happens in the real world, in real life. And so we're going to take a look at this. Now, initially, I didn't think this was like a proper topic to bring to the show. We're kind of more lighthearted, but this is all I've been like really watching this afternoon and really paying attention to, and I knew I couldn't just ignore it for the podcast. I had to just kind of show you guys some of the deep secrets of our government. Obviously, I'm not going to be like breaking any new news or anything, but it's just stuff like this that this is the kind of stuff that I find interesting on my own time, and sometimes want to bring that to the show. So we're gonna be going over that, as well as we got some some of the more usual show topics, including what we're gonna try and cover on Friday's show. Which, by the way, apologies for Friday's show. It was out of my control. We were having some bad weather, so the internet was gonna be weak, so I couldn't really cover a show that night. But we're back here. Monday time, 5 shows this week planned. Hopefully it works out. We got some funny stuff to go over. It's going to be a fun, good time. Bowblax, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up?
What's
I'm
up,
doing
man?
pretty well.
So, have you been keeping up to date with this Finder shit? This secret cult?
Well, I've seen the Medicare stream, but that's about it. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm up to date. He was pretty thorough in that stream. It was crazy.
I saw a
when
couple
I was hearing
videos.
about it.
Medicare offered a summary at the end, so we'd taken a look at that in just a moment. But yeah. The tunnels are always real. That is true. The fucking tunnels, man. Dude, I've not, like, when I was watching that stream, I had that feeling of, like, discomfort. It's kind of like when you see something, like, really gross on screen, except the difference is that instead of it being, like, a visual, very obvious, discomforting thing to look at, it's like a mentally uncomfortable thing to listen to, just hearing about all these like the tunnels and shit, satanic, sex trafficking tunnels underneath preschools, and you know, kids being driven in big vans in the middle of the night, being delivered to barns and shipped out to places like fucking like North Korea and Mexico. Like all this shit, just like literally like listening to the stream, I had to like turn it off for a minute and just collect myself. I had to like play some video games while I listened to it, just to keep like part of my mind off of it, just because like I needed like I don't want to say like I needed to like you know, like collect myself or something, because that made it sound like I was like sobbing or something. I wasn't like that, but I did need to take it in bits and pieces for a minute there with all that shit he was going through, man. It was some serious fucked up shit. But you know, we were taking a look at some of that. How you been doing, man?
I've been doing pretty good.
Good shit to hear. How's that 100K going?
100K, yeah.
Getting that sub
I
button.
guess I'm working to it slowly. I actually kind of took a break from like doing YouTube videos this past weekend. Like I haven't done that in quite a while. I've kind of always just been on the grind, but there hasn't been any new, like substantial news going on recently where I have to make a video right away. And it's just one of those times where I felt like I needed to take a step back and, you know, focus on other shit for a while. So
yeah, I hear you, man.
yeah, I had a pretty good weekend though.
Like I said, guys, I had a good weekend as well. Like I said, guys, Apologies Friday show. We're gonna go for 5 shows a week this week. See how it goes. Some house cleaner stuff, some plugging first before we get into our lead up story. There's gonna be a lot of stuff going on this channel. I'm gonna be doing clips now directly to this channel. These clips are definitely they're gonna do nothing but good things for this channel. It's gonna provide like an easy way for, you know, big topics. Like, for instance, this Finder shit, and also some of the other stuff we're going through on the show. So I'm going to start clipping stuff on this channel. So be on the lookout. If you get a lot more notifications than usual from this channel, that's what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be a good thing overall. It's going to bring a lot of new people into the show. But at the same time, like, the people who are already subbed here, they're going to be like, fuck this. Too many notifications and stuff. But, you know, I think overall it's going to be a good change to the channel. So just be on the lookout for that. As well as a couple plugs here. Of course, you can support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/AugieRFC. Big shout out to my $10 patrons, Snake Ray, Deffy, Junko, and Timmy James, as well as Asthemic. I appreciate support on Patreon. It's always vital to keeping the show going. As well as Streamlabs, streamlabs.com/AugieRFC. So yeah, with that being said, let's just go ahead and waste no time and just get right into this shit. Actually, first, let me get some shots in the chat, see who's in here and shit, because I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. As you can see, I'm a little wasted tonight just because, you know, like I said, like, watching the Medicare stream, it wasn't like, when I say I've been watching videos about this whole situation, like, all afternoon, it's not like I've been, like, you know, like, excitedly, like, in a way, it's, like, morbid curiosity, but at the same time, it's also, like, it's just depressing to listen to, so... Little winded tonight from all of that, but it's some pretty deep shit, pretty important shit to go over.
I mean, luckily it was like years and years ago, so everything regarding, like, all the terrible stuff regarding that situation, I would assume has been solved for the better at this point in time. But
yeah, I guess we're gonna see what happens. I know Medicare went through, like, there was like a 300-page document that was put up by the FBI themselves, just releasing previously confidential information. But Medicare went through a stream. He went through about half of it, about like 180 pages. And the other half he's going to be going through on Halloween night, I believe. Or I think Thursday night, the day before Halloween. So yeah, there you go. Also, by the way, Halloween's on Friday. So yeah, big spooky time. I always said Halloween's like the best holiday. I don't know about you guys, but that's my favorite one. All right, let's try.
I'm not really a big fan of Halloween. I feel like Halloween's hit or miss. It's like people either love it or they don't like it, and I'm on the don't like it side. But
why?
It's fine. It's not like I hate. It's not like, oh, I wish Halloween never existed or whatever. It's just like I could go
on
with
the
or without
topic
it.
of like
It's
satanic,
whatever.
you know, satanic fever. What do they call it? Something like that, like satanic like fear or something from like the 80s or something. What did you grow up in, like the family that was like, all right, fuck Halloween, that shit's, you know, cursed, you know, we're not doing that?
Oh no.
Because that's like a legit thing that happens. Like my friends and stuff, like some of them like grew up in families where it's like the friends that I have that are like pretty edgy nowadays. Like they oddly enough, they always come from like families that are like super like sheltered or something, or if the very least like not sheltered, like more like controlling early on and shit like that. So they were always like, all right, Halloween's gonna send you to hell permanently. You don't do that shit. Fuck Halloween.
Oh, exactly.
That kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
No. Normally, my family would be against that stuff. I mean, they didn't let me play Pokemon for fuck's sake. But like,
yeah, that like, type of stuff.
Yeah. Because
what was the connection with Pokemon and Satanism?
I think there was like a news report or something, or like a really long-winded thing that was going around, being like, "Oh, Pokemon satanic," and then they caught wind of that, and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna allow that." But
that's weird.
No, we did do trick or treating, but we were considered like within the extended family. We were considered like the edgy family for doing it. Like
yeah,
none of my cousins did it or anything.
Weird. It's
and
like
it was
you
like,
dress up
holy
as
shit.
like you put a blanket on. You're a ghost. You go grab candy. Like what's satanic about? Like what's even like fucked up about this? You're literally just trying to get some candy, dude. Like.
Yeah, I feel like the more
big.
dangerous aspect of it is getting candy from strangers. That would be the more dangerous aspect of it, potentially. But even then, it's like...
You know what my family does?
Fucking like... I don't think anyone even thinks to do anything malicious because it's just like, why, dude? It's like...
We'll like dead ass like, before we went trick-or-treating, like look up like all like the convicted, sex offenders in our neighborhood and like make sure like, all right, don't go to that house, don't go to that house, don't go to that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's like, all right, we're good now.
we're better safe than sorry, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. We're not trying to get raped on Halloween. That would suck.
Yeah, dude.
Oh my God, man. But no, that's like a legit thing. It's like people who are, always like, yeah, oh, Halloween. Like that shit's like fucking curse and shit. We don't do that Halloween. Fuck that.
I just don't like Halloween because as a kid I don't like dressing up. So that's why I didn't like it. It was just like something
say like that was like the best part, but it's like the reward at the end was worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. No, but the thing is, as a child, like, I was allergic to wheat and dairy. So, like, I couldn't even have half of the candies. Like, all the fucking chocolate that I got was confiscated.
Yeah, but
that's
the
like
chocolate
a vast
candies
majority.
are like the worst part. Like, it's all about that fruit candy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but like,
the
vast majority of houses are going to give out chocolate because
that's
it's the easiest. So, like, 90% of your candy gets confiscated.
Yeah.
While your siblings get all of it, and it's just like, okay.
You just have to watch all your like rewards being taken away, just stripped from you.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this shit. People are getting antsy. People are getting antsy in the chat. Greenleaf City Video Gaming, Snicked Ray, The Wanderer, Nicholas Dioria, what's going on, man? Augie, cover the real story. This is the real story. Talk about Halloween, bitch.
Yeah, dude.
Irish Boy, Renegator66, Dear AC, what's up, chat? Michael, Luna Lizzie, and Habana Bay, what's going on, chat? All right, let's get into this real shit. All right, our first story. Whew, it's gonna be a big one. Like I said, I was trying to like steer away from this for the show at first, but then I was like, man, there's just no way we can't talk about this shit. I'm gonna play you a summary from Mr. Medicare's stream, and we're gonna react to this. And chat, actually, I'm curious, right? First up, before we even put the shit on, type of one in the chat if you're familiar with this story, or if you have like no clue, because I'm curious, like who already knows about this shit. Oh wait, Nick, you're talking about the other story. You're talking about the other story. The other story. Yeah. Alright, so some people familiar. No clue, 0, nah, no clue. Okay, so it's about, I'd say, like, roughly half and half. Okay, well, prepare for some wild-ass shit. Alright, let's begin this right now.
Without my opinion on top of it. So, here's what we know.
Oh, I forgot that I'm not sharing the audio to you.
Yeah, I was like, let's get started. Okay.
All right, let's go. Let's rewind it back and take a listen to this shit.
Of what we know conclusively now after having read this. Without my opinion on top of it. So here's what we know. In 1987, in Tallahassee, Florida, 2 men with 6 children were taken into custody. The 2 men were uncooperative, faked, as a police report indicated, fainting to avoid being taken into custody. The children were malnourished, dirty, smelled badly, had no underwear, were wearing mismatched clothing.
You know, a typical, midnight in Florida. You're just walking by a park. You see a van full of 6 children, 2 men driving it. all the children look like they want to kill themselves and shit like that. Just a normal evening or nightly a scene that you're used to.
Dude, it's just a local daycare, dude.
Yeah, local daycare in the middle of the fucking night.
Yeah.
Had
They're going
scratches and
overtime,
bug
dude.
bites
Yeah, exactly.
all over them. Were very hungry and stated they only ate when they did well, and that
They
when they did
only
eat,
ate when they did well. These are what the children are saying once they're confiscated by the police. They tell the police we're only fed when we do well. Very obviously sketchy situation over here. Now let's keep listening.
It was raw potatoes and maybe some carrots. One of the investigators in Tallahassee did an examination of 2 of the children and found that they had been sexually abused. On a third child, they found that they had evidence of bite marks. 2 warrants were conducted, one in Tallahassee and one
Bite children. Like, I don't even understand that one. Like, some of the shit, like, I don't even understand why they would do this type of stuff. Like, what's the goal?
Washington. On the Washington location, the police stated there were classified maps of underground tunnels and sewer networks under Washington, D.C. There were also books at one of the locations about mind control. When these warrants were being executed...
By the way, those sewers under Washington, D.C. were where they took children to do satanic child sex rituals.
Officials...
They being, of course, this cult known as the Finders.
...from the FBI and the Customs Agency took over with the investigation. It was quashed initially after 1 day. The FBI agent, as described in the police report,
Yeah, there was also tunnels underneath the preschool that were found in documents when they investigated this sort of cult that a lot of people locally were reporting. People locally would report, like,
tunnels?
in barns or something, there would be vans that would drive to the barns in the middle of the night full of screaming children. This sounds like it's coming from a movie.
Screaming.
Because you might be thinking, you hear a police report from a local talking about vans driving children in the middle of the night that are screaming and bleeding. You think, oh, obviously it's so obvious what's going on here. This is going to be stomped out by local police and government in a matter of seconds. You hear a report like this, you don't even need an investigation to figure out what's going on here. You don't need to be a brain surgeon to dissect, all this information that's going on here. And even still, when there is an investigation, you find connections to underground tunnels where they investigated the tunnels. They found like bones of animals where ghosts were sacrificed to Satan and shit like that, with pentagons like drawn all over the ground. Like, it's so obvious, like, what the fuck's going on here? But this whole thing's covered the fuck up.
A walkthrough without investigating any of the actual evidence. The evidence itself from the 1987 Warren searches mysteriously vanished and could not be located for the 93 inquiry, with one report stating it had been probably sent to Tallahassee for the detectives to use down there. One of the Metro Police Department investigators, who was involved in trying to figure out what was going on, interviewed an intelligence officer from the CIA, who told them that they were in fact stepping on their toes by doing this investigation. Further, it was explained that this group went back beyond earlier than 1987, potentially as far back as 1969, that they were involved in going to hostile countries such as the Soviet Union, North Korea, and North Vietnam. The initial story about bringing the children to Mexico to go to a higher education school is contradicted by testimony from another person who stated they were told they were in fact going to China via Hawaii. The Metro Police Department officer who had been conducting his investigation stated he felt that the CIA was involved, that it wasn't just a nod from them, but that they had their hands in this. And at the end of the day, with all this weird shit going on, after a week's time, investigation closed, children returned, and we didn't find out, and none of the mystery.
Children returned to the cult, by the way. Not
the parents.
Yeah.
Were solved.
If
witnesses are saying
to the people claiming to be the parents that are part of this fucked up child sex satanic cult,
that before they showed up in Tallahassee, Florida, there were men with 10 children, and they showed up with 6 children. Where did the other 4 go?
Wait.
What happened to them? Why in one of the Metro Police Department reports does it state that they were denying certain evidence was found at a warrant search, and then the next paragraph explaining that in fact that evidence was found at the warrant search. How could the CIA, the FBI, Department of Justice, Attorney General, House of Representatives, foreign intelligence networks, I'm guessing MI6 from the London correspondence, and Interpol, all be involved in a group and come to the conclusion that...
Tommy C in the chat says, not all the kids got returned. Medicare left that out. I'm trying to see. Wait,
so some of the children went back to like child services or something?
Yeah, like what happened to the other kids? And why would Medicare leave that out? I
think maybe he just made a mistake.
Interesting.
That nothing's going on.
It's fucked up that any of them got returned regardless. So.
Why would that many intelligence agencies be involved with nothing going on? But perhaps the most bizarre thing out of all of this is that in the middle of this document dump by the FBI regarding the finders, in the middle of it, sandwiched in between
someone that went to foster care,
U.S. Customs statistical analysis and a letter to U.S. Customs, is an archaeology map of McMartin preschool showing tunnels and talking about what was found there, with McMartin or whatever it is preschool being a place where children allege that they were victims of sexual abuse and satanic rituals. Why did the archaeologist notes state that there were in fact tunnels, that they found pentagrams on objects, and hundreds upon hundreds of animal bones in these tunnels that ran between this school and a neighboring property? It seems very bizarre that was put in between two custom documents talking about this. And we're only, with all of that, we're only 180 pages in. There are still 140 pages of this, plus whatever information the guy that is looking to write a book about this might have, plus what information I might be able to find about it if you stumble on anything. If you come across an interview with one of the kids, with one of the police officers involved, just any supplementary...
I think he's going to go plug his shit now. So there's just a little piece of this information that was kind of summarized in a Medicare stream here.
Yeah, obviously the first 3 hours is him going in depth on it, but...
Yeah, he really goes in depth on it.
Summary.
Just listening to this again, like on the show, it's hard to get through and listen to all this shit, you know?
Is this crazy? Like, every time you think it's like something shitty happens, right? It's like really bad, and then like the worst I don't know. It's just like even worse and even worse on top of that. It's like not only is there bite mark, not only is it that, not only is that, it's like holy shit. And on top of that, it's all trying to be covered up.
I'm taking a look at what Tom is writing in the chat here, because I saw he put something up on Twitter. Oh, he's in the call. Let's just pull him in right now.
He's saying,
"Hey Tommy, what's going on, man?"
Oh, okay. I guess he's glitching. Yo, what's up, Tommy?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud. I don't know how good is this guy. I might have to go to my computer. Yeah, talk again so I can.
Hello?
All right, I'm going to try to call you on my computer.
Okay. All right.
All right, isn't going to work.
Yeah. He's stuck in the Matrix. Yeah, it seems like Tommy has a lot to say about
Tommy
this.
early in the chat said something about Mr. Medicare possibly trolling. I don't know what he would troll about.
I'm confused in all of this, because when I watched the stream today, it seemed to be a very, comprehensive kind of look at, the documentation as it unfolded. Now it seems like Tommy's got something, so I'm curious to see what he has to say. But, like I was saying, just listening to this, it's a hard stream to get through. Not because of anything informational wise, but just I don't know, just listening to this, I gotta keep pausing it and just kind of whoa, kind of hold myself together there. But yeah, some deep fucked up shit there. Kind of like I said before, we on this channel we go pretty lighthearted on stuff that we cover, and even the most serious stories that we take on. You hear me saying this a lot. You're like, I'm always just like, why is nobody talking about this, and why is, justice not being served if people know the information, like with stuff about I'm Alex. Like I said, this is just a grim reminder that shit like that happens on YouTube that you people see every day doesn't even compare to the corruption that goes on in the real world and stuff like this. And we saw everyone talk about, the Epstein story 2 months ago. Everybody became a conspiracy theorist 2 months ago. And now we're seeing this happen again. There's similarities in the story. Everybody knows the facts of what happened. Even back in 20, 30 years ago, people knew clearly what was going on here just by seeing the information laid out. Yet justice was not served. The children, most of the children were returned to this cult. Several top secret government organizations carried the story and dropped it. Said there was nothing going on here. They said in the documents that this cult, is not, dangerous unless they're like motivated. Well, if they're motivated, like what are they motivated for? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, the fact that all this shit happened, like they should just be arrested and prosecuted. No, like what about? It's like, oh, they're not motivated, so they're not going to do any more bad things. It's like, okay.
They investigated the house where they investigated like the barn where children were being drawn in from vans, screaming and crying in the middle of the night. They found photographs of naked children. They've seen the children in the state that they are, obviously sexually abused. And they came to the conclusion that no child sex abuse was happening. Like this is
It's strange.
You can't just write this shit down. Like this is just
it's like a movie, or like if you took a movie script and then made it even more absurd. Like, what if this happened in the movie, but then except it's actually happening?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's crazy, man.
I don't know, man.
I just don't know why it was covered up. That's the weird thing about it.
Well, presumably,
the whole thing is fucking weird.
They were like, this was covered up because the CIA was a part of the cult.
So there was cult members in the CIA?
I guess.
Like,
that's like the crazy part of this whole story.
Yeah, but there's so many like people involved. Like you can't just drop an investigation based off one person or like two people that are like infiltrating double agent type thing.
No, I think it's pretty obvious why this was buried. It would incriminate top people, working in the government. I think I was watching the medical stream. He goes into more detail. This story was going to be picked up. It happened in 1987. 6 years later, a news organization was going to cover the story again, and immediately they're like scrambling, like trying to like cover their asses and shit. The people that buried this in the first place. CIA assets, yeah, exactly. But yeah, there you go. Glowy Bowblax.
Yeah. Tommy's
bring
back.
Tommy in.
I'll drag him in.
Hey, Tommy.
Hey, what's up? Listen, I'm part of the problem here. From what I wrote last night, Mediger, I think, after talking to a couple people, one person that knows him, may be pumping this story up for the sake of entertainment or just to be a troll or something like that. Let me be clear. This story is fucked. There is something here. It's very fishy. But there's two things you have to understand before we go forward. There's something called raw data that police collect. All right? Like FBI, the police department, something like that. Everything that is, and essentially what we're reading when you read the FBI files are raw data. That doesn't mean they've been proven. That just means that's the information they collected. Let me give you an example. If one of those people said they shot JFK, it would be in that report. Just because you're reading the raw data doesn't mean it's fact. It just means that's what the police collected. Okay? One of the problems I have with what Mediger was doing is he was talking about the satanic panic of the 80s, which I lived through and remember and saw victims of it. A lot of crap. Ozzy Osbourne was getting kids to kill themselves. The satanic panic was a incident in the United States that put people in jail. You can go look up the Memphis 3 in the early 90s, where these kids were locked up for 19 years over a crime they didn't commit over the satanic panic. And he was, I got to say, irresponsibly saying that this proves that it was real. It doesn't. What you saw in there with the underground tunnels in the McMartin School, which was the sort of beginning of the Satanic Panic, all right? They, and I have to admit, I have no explanation why the Finders case was linked in this report to the McMartin School. I have no idea why was that was there. There's no explanation. That's a question. It's not proof. I have no idea what it was connected. Apparently, in 1983, there was a woman who was schizophrenic. She was found to be schizophrenic and died 3 years later, that said her child was taken down into a dungeon under the McMartin School, and he was molested by this guy, Buckley McMartin. The Buckley McMartin family that owned it, and this became the longest trial in United States history. All right, they found no evidence that these children were molested at the time. None. Zero, zip. In fact, one of the children, you can look it up, and claimed that Chuck Norris came down there and molested him. Now, after the McMartin family was completely and totally destroyed, the lawyer said, look, you want to dig up the yard before I said, because he actually received the property. I guess he was doing the family a favor. They were just, because they owed him legal bills after the longest trial in U.S. history. And some people dug it up. Now, according to that FBI file, they found animal bones. They found drawn pentagrams inside the McMartin School, which I think had been closed at that point since 1982, before both you guys were born. And they found those things down there. Now they might not be able to arrest those people because you might be able to arrest those people because it would be considered double jeopardy. All of them are found innocent because they couldn't find any evidence, and the tactic they used, how they used the kids to testify against them, was considered. I mean, I think they changed the laws over it. And again, the kids were they said they were flying away on weather balloons to go slaughter goats. Now, according to that raw data, that FBI data that we saw, they found they claimed they found animal bones and pentagrams down there. Well, here's the thing. Maybe, and it just didn't make the report, they found it after the fact. Now, they did find a tunnel down there. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not saying that's not suspicious. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be looked into. And
what do you mean after the fact, though?
Yeah. Well, the school closed since 83. They found the tunnel didn't get dug up till the early 90s. It's a 10-year difference.
All right.
Anything could have happened. Anything could be put there at that point. Who the fuck knows? The fact that there was the real crime is, how come there was no investigation after that? Here's the thing. What Medic was doing last night, and it was basically saying, those people were right. There was no such thing as a satanic panic. What you need to do is you need to watch the video that he displayed in the beginning, which is really, really, really well done. And it gets to the real questions. And what I think what Mediger is trying to do to make it more entertaining is blow up the Satanism side. The Satanism stuff is probably a red herring. There may have been child trafficking. That very well may be. This may be a situation where the FBI and all these organizations got together and said, "Holy shit, we fucked up in '87. We should have felt this, and now it's going to be on 48 hours," which is, I don't know if that shows on the States anymore. But to sit there and say that the Satanic Panic was now a real thing is like, I gotta say it's fucking irresponsible. Again, I want to make this abundantly clear. There's something here. There's no doubt, but don't fall for the movie-like red herring. And the other thing I've discovered, and I'm not even done studying this stuff, is if they were going to nail these people, there's almost no way. The leader of the cult's dead, and it was a legitimate cult called the Finders. And it appears that some of the members of the Finders, if this was going on, they were probably actually unaware of any criminality. Here's the thing. They didn't have enough evidence to arrest anybody. That's why nobody got arrested, it looks like. Now, did the CIA and the Customs Agency and the FBI cover it up? Maybe, because the Tallahassee Police Department said that 2 of these kids were molested. This is something the Medicaid left out as well. One of the kids had a problem with sphincter control, which was consistent with being sodomized. Another girl had vaginal penetration. They thought vaginal penetration. They thought that may have been by fingers, right? And then all of a sudden, all these agencies said, "We got nothing on these kids. We got nothing on this cult," and they let everybody go. Some of the kids, and you don't know which, were put in foster care. The other kids were returned to people who were claiming their families. It's totally irresponsible. It's beyond fucking stupid. What the fuck was the FBI thinking? Why is the CIA involved? Why was Customs involved? Why was Tallahassee Police Department working hard on this? And it was just all of a sudden, oh, there's no problem here. Yeah, that's true. But to sit there and say, because we found tunnels, because we found, they found tunnels in Washington, D.C., and they weren't able to put this together. This could be, I don't know for sure, raw data that was written down. This could be people went down there and they, me and you can go in the same movie and see two different things. So the idea that this proves that the satanic panic was real and we had a bunch of people running around in the 80s committing acts of Satanism, and then all of a sudden it just died in the 90s because the phenomenon just kind of died, it went away. It's just, I think he's just trying to be super entertaining. I don't think there's much to it. But as far as
so your main issue is him like kind of overplaying
yes, he overplayed the Satanism part for sure. Absolutely. He doesn't. But here's the thing. Like I acknowledge that the McMartin report was the McMartin the underground stuff. That's completely bizarre, right? But here's the thing. Like you don't know. Some FBI agents somewhere they go in there. They say all this stuff. Yeah, we saw the abandoned bones. Another group goes down there and says we didn't find shit. And the case just gets cold and stale after a while because they don't have any direct evidence. They don't know when the bones were placed there. I mean, Jesus. I mean, we used to go in abandoned buildings all the time. If I lived next to McMartin building, I could see myself as a teenager breaking in there and doing weird shit, or even leaving weird shit.
Yeah, but they found like fucking like goat bone, like all kind like pentagrams drawn on the ground and shit.
Stuff, and some of it is consistent with what the kids supposedly testified to. Yeah. When did they find it? Who was there? Like, there's no details other than we found a tunnel. There's nothing there.
That's like pretty damning on its own, don't you think?
No, not for a complete case. Why wasn't there an arrest? I mean, it's completely unbelievable. It's not. And another thing, again, this goes back to raw data. All we're doing is we're getting a dump of redacted information. Another thing is, where are these kids? I mean, not one has come forward and said that they were molested back then. They would all be around my age. Like, there's like I think the thing is, like, what Medicare found is questions. He did not find the answer. He found more questions, and questions that probably need to be found. But at the end of the day, these tunnels, we don't know, because this was just a massive information dump of raw information that creates legitimate questions. Again, I'm going to get you the fucking video. You should have watched this before you did the show, because you can see this video that Medicare put this on his stream. He actually played the very beginning of this video. This takes a rational look at the whole situation. And believe me, without Medicare, it's completely fucking creepy as is. He didn't need to spice it up at all. He didn't need to say that the satanic panic was a real thing. I mean, it starts to feel like, I mean, I saw people in there. It's like, oh, I guess Pizzagate's real now too. Oh, come on. It's getting a little ridiculous, but it's called.
What about the pictures that they found of kids slaughtering goats in robes, as someone points out in the chat?
There's no doubt that that's weird, but I have no answer for the fact that they allowed those kids to go back to the cult. I have no answer for that. But what does that have to the slaughtering goats? What does that have to do? There is no such thing as fucking organized Satanism outside of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, a guy who would turn people in for talking crazy stuff. I mean, this Satanism thing, it's like nobody can pin these people down. They're ghosts. It's mostly, the Satanism is usually aligned with urban legend. I mean, you mean these guys got away with this stuff for years and years and years? Here, I'm going to send you. You need to watch this video right here, and this is the one that Medicare cited. All right, and it's still a mystery. The whole thing's a fucking mystery, but they don't have the answers. They even say at the end, we don't have the answer. The real points of this, and there was the guy had a Hispanic last name. I want to say he's Martinez. He was an investigator for the FBI, and he said he found a bunch of crazy shit, and he still says he stands by the report. And during the investigation for this documentary, he stopped talking with the documentary maker, and apparently his career is ruined after he gave this report. It is really weird what happened to this guy. There's no doubt about it. There is mystery here. There is intrigue. There might be a smoking gun. But the idea that Satanic Panic was all real. Well, what about the kids in West Memphis, Tennessee, that weren't even at the scene of the crime, and they were convicted because the Satanism expert that testified against them was asked, how are these kids able to kill these children, not get any blood or dirt on them? And in court in West Memphis, he said that's because they probably drank the blood of the children. That's what put those kids in jail for 20 years. So I want to give you an idea how insane this shit was in the 80s.
Right. I mean, I understand we got like a few loony cases.
That's the thing he was. But he was like, yeah, I guess those people. I guess it was just the Satanic Panic, guys. Yeah. I guess people were just going over nothing. The woman that started the McMartin case died 3 years later, pronounced of schizophrenia. She died of alcoholism and schizophrenia, and she's pronounced it as schizophrenia in '86. I mean, Chuck Norris was supposedly fingered as one of the people that was molesting people under there. It's utterly fucking insane. Now, I'm not saying that. I think
but in those cases, I'm assuming those are loony cases with no evidence or data to support any of this.
But that case was connected to the Finder's case. That case was connected to the Finder's case. That was the McMartin preschool. Okay. That's the thing you got to ask yourself. It's not that, we have it's not that like, all right, you should be asking yourself, why is the McMartin case in this case file for the Finders? Not, this proves that they're a Satanist. Like I said, there's more questions than answers. You got to be asking yourself, like, all right, we have this Finders cult, okay? A cult where no one has ever been arrested, right? A cult where they found these freaking children and they returned them to, apparently the parents, some were put into foster care and the guys that were found with them were let go, all right? And then about quarter way down the FBI files, which I read, the McMartin case is in there. The question is, why is the McMartin case in here? There's no connection. They just say they found tunnels on the McMartin case, and there's animal bones and pentagrams down there. Why? Who? What? Where? When? How? I mean, it's like there's no credit. It's like everybody's doing this thing where they like, well, it's got to be that then. When was the last group of Satanists arrested in the last 50 fucking years in the United States for doing these type of crimes? Is this common? Is there an international network here? I mean, Medicare behaved as if he solved the case. And if anything, he shined light on an old case that needs investigating. That's my problem with this.
I don't know if he said he had like any answers or whatever. He was just
but he kept sarcastically. I know what you mean. No, he didn't say he had any answer, but he was being tricky about it. He was doing is like, well, it's like what he does with Epstein. Well, I guess he just did a backflip over the thing and did a somersault and broke his neck. Well, I guess there's just there was nothing to the Satan thing, and he says it really sarcastically. So you say, yeah, I guess they're covering it up. It's kind of a trick.
Medicare kind of does that with everything. Like,
yeah, that's true. So, I mean, he can't be taken literally then, can he?
Yeah, I mean, basically, how I saw the stream is he saw this information and he's like, yo, guys, check this shit out. Isn't this crazy? That's
yes,
it. He's not providing any answers. He's
no, but he did, but he does interject and say, well, I guess this is, there was nothing to see here. There was nothing to go around. It's the idea. He's pumping up the audience. And look, there's a lot here. What you guys should do, it's an hour. I don't know if you can do it. You should watch that fucking documentary tonight. And it'll actually put the real mystery in perspective rather than, Medicare trying to get everybody fucking riled up over nothing. And by the way, I was drinking last night. I was watching this thing. I'm like, holy fucking shit. I got sober. I looked some things up. I watched the rest of the documentary and I said, yeah, there's a legitimate mystery here, but it doesn't prove that the Satanic Panic was real. And by the way, the Satanic Panic was spread outside the United States all the way to New Zealand.
Yeah, but was he trying to make a case that all of that was real, or was he just taking jabs at people who were so quick to dismiss the whole movement and then kind of show
yeah,
one
but
case where it was correct.
but the movement, just because they found a raw data file inside the FBI file that was ready to find it, doesn't fucking prove
right.
that
But did he go into the stream to disprove this whole like 80s myth of the satanic? Or not
no,
to
he
disprove, but
actually,
to
if he did anything, he went to promote it.
Right, but was he making like jabs, or was he like trying to be like, "See, guys, there's truth in this"?
I don't know. It's like a comedian. You know, to me, that's a bullshit tactic. It's like a comedian that makes a political statement, and when he's called out on it, it's like, just jokes. That's what it sounds like to me.
I took it as jokes when I listened to it.
Yeah, it certainly was, and certainly entertaining. He's one of the most entertaining guys on the internet. But you're seeing this thing right now. Like I even had a guy write to me, "This is real." No. We have questions. We don't have answers.
Yeah.
Like you were even saying in the beginning of this podcast, isn't it obvious? We have tunnels here. We have this here. We have raw data. You were saying that in the beginning. So yeah, that was the desired effect. Is not to look at this critically and say, holy shit, and holy shit. By the way, a little thing on Epstein. I don't know if Epstein killed himself or not. My brother works for the government. Okay. And you guys can look this up. There was a Russian hockey coach back in around 2011-12 that killed himself in a prison. My brother came upon this. Okay. There's a way to apparently hang yourself where if you tie a rope around your neck and you don't even have to be that far off the ground and you roll off the bed. And once you roll off the bed, that's it. You're done. You cannot roll back. And that's the way this Russian killed himself. He's in federal prison. My brother found him. Right. So my point is like, it's not impossible that Jeffrey Epstein actually did kill himself. It's suspicious, just like this case. But to sit there and act like
the cameras malfunctioning, the guards, like
all that. Yeah, but here's the thing: you have no idea how incompetent the government is. I work for the government. My brother works for the government too. But here's the thing: if you don't find lack of evidence, doesn't show that there is evidence. You still have to look at this critically. Now, again, I'm going to leave you on this. There's something to the Finder's case. There's something very fucked up. My guess is they let these people go because they're completely fucking incompetent. And when 48 Hours was going to do a show in 93, all those agencies panicked. They completely panicked. Or hey, look, there could be kids get moved around all the time. People do sell slaves. They do sell sex slaves. Kids do get involved in that. There's been a problem with this in the Middle East and Europe and apparently in the United States too. But you have to have evidence. You can't just say, well, this must be what it appears to be.
Yeah, of course.
That's not critical think. That's not critical think.
That's why it's called a conspiracy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, then it's a conspiracy. A conspiracy theory doesn't really have much evidence.
Yeah, but
to
they
back
have
it up.
evidence. You're just questioning like the evidence. Like, when was this collected?
And then McMartin's case, yeah. But here's the thing: problem with this case, there's so much to it. It's deep. There's plenty of places to go. The McMartin thing might not have anything to do with it. The McMartin, maybe they were investigating the fucking tunnels in Washington D.C. and they put the McMartin case to see if there was a connection. And they just left it in the reports, realizing there's no connection. You don't know what conclusions the FBI came to. All you have is the raw data. It's one of the reasons. You remember a couple months ago when Trump was pissing and moaning that he didn't want the entire Russia report out. You know why he didn't want that? Because there's probably raw data in there that people will take literally. If somebody said that Trump told me that he murdered somebody in 1982, that would be in the fucking report. Now, what happens is Robert Mueller looks at that. He sees there's no evidence in there. It stays in the report, but they don't follow it up because it's bullshit. That's raw data. And that's why Trump didn't want the Democrats getting a hold of it, because they would selectively leak some of it. Because he probably was accused of crimes that Mueller couldn't prove or find any evidence for. So all we're seeing is the raw data, redacted raw data at that. So we don't know. My point is, nobody solved the case. This is really weird. Watch this thing. There's no evidence that the Satanic Panic thing was a legit thing now. None, zero, zip. There's no organizations of Satanists out there. I mean, that's just completely that's mad. That's Alex Jones shit. I think what he was giving it a very clever Alex Jones treatment. There's a mystery here, but let's not get sidetracked with the madness. And part of it's my fault because I made that tweet last night. I've been drinking. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, you said you were drinking in the tweet, so obviously.
Yeah, I did. I was like,
yeah,
holy shit! I couldn't believe
are inclined to take it with a grain of salt at that point, right?
Yeah. Maybe I did that. Maybe I did that just in case I woke up and say, God, this is bullshit. But
yeah,
it's not
that was
bullshit.
a smart move. I should do that on all of my tweets, dude. Being like, by the way, I'm drunk.
It's not bullshit. There's a mystery here, but it's a mystery like a missing person. It's not a mystery that we have this fucking. I think what needs to happen is I think there needs to be pressure on the FBI to probably reopen the investigation and maybe unredact some of those names and put some pressure on them and say, what exactly did you see here? What's going on? And another thing is a lot of the investigators 30 years ago, a lot of people involved with this are dead.
Mm-hmm.
They're fucking dead. Those 6 kids would be in their mid-40s now. You know, who the fuck knows? And another thing is, like, I was a little surprised that he left the fact that here's the mystery. The Tallahassee Police Department said those kids were molested and they handed them back. But we don't know which kids they handed back because later in that episode it says some of them went into foster care. So I don't fucking know. Medicare sit there and said all of them went back. That's not true, according to the video that he gave us. I'm saying, like, you got to take him with a grain of salt, too. I'm not saying he's a fucking liar. He's an entertainer. He's a troll. He's fucking one of the most intriguing people on the internet, hands down. But you cannot take him as a news source or literally.
I mean, you can't really take most things like literally and definitively if you're trying to think about stuff critically. But
I wonder if people quote me sometimes when I'm making an insane statement and leave all the context out of it, or the fact that I'm trying to say something over the top and they use that as an evidence in one of their arguments. I wonder about that all the time. But I think like, whereas I'm a little more obvious, I think Medicare might be a little more deceptive. You know, and I think if I was going to get argument,
he's just trying to put on a good show. I don't think he's.
He's put on a good show, and what he would say is, "Look, we have the data. Yeah, but it's raw data. You have to put the data in context. If I could simplify this, look, we saw his last.
The context looks awful, though.
Yeah, but when you're trying to present a story like this, you're not going to.
No, not the context of what's in there.
Out to this, like he's
not the context. That what's with the context of the actual thing is where is this coming from? Where the context of this? Why was this dismissed? Why wasn't this followed up? There may be rational reasons for it, or it may be a cover-up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can't assume the worst and say that the United States government is involved in child trafficking just by looking at that. And here we have the evidence because the FBI recorded it in 1993. That's not critical thinking.
Yeah. Well, there's always more discussion to be had on that topic, especially like with how big it is. But Medicare didn't have like all the time in the world to talk about absolutely everything. I mean, he's going to follow this up on Halloween with another stream. So like,
yeah, I know.
Maybe he'll talk about it there.
He's in the YouTube business. He's going to make YouTube money, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I already have people in my. I have people on my timeline. I heard it early in this podcast. This is the evidence of fucking Satanist activity, and it's to the highest reaches of government. Okay, I've heard that in this podcast already. I'm hearing that on my timeline. That's not true. What we found is a lead. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, he presented information on his stream.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. And it's worth. And there, like, again, there could be something here. Bingo. I'll talk to you later, guys.
Okay.
All right,
see ya.
see you later, man.
Yeah. It's more fun to say it's definitive, though. So.
Well, I hear this story and it lines up pretty obvious for me, but I'm still I'm not just gonna be like, closed-minded.
Yeah, you can't like take everything at face value and follow everything blindly. But I mean, I don't really think Mr. Medicare's at fault for like, making those satirical jabs or whatever. I think he was just like presenting that. He was like, yo guys, I found this crazy shit.
Yeah.
Here's what it is. Here's my opinion. That's it. Like, I don't think it's like deceptive or anything along those lines. It's just him displaying the information.
I'm curious. I think what Tommy's like main issue is with the Satanism shit, but
yeah.
Where do we go from here, boys? He wants us to watch a documentary. I don't know if that's like something we should do on stream. I don't know. To be honest, like I thought we were just gonna like lightly touch on this on the stream. Like I haven't looked into it to the extent like I didn't even watch the entire Medicare stream, so I don't know if he said like definitively this is the satanic panic or whatever. Like half the shit Tommy talked about was news to me, but obviously like if I were to make a definitive video or like a definitive statement on this, I would look into it. But I was just like, yo, Mr. Medicare talked about this is crazy. That's about it. That's all I was gonna say. But yeah. All right, guys, I'm gonna toss you guys a poll, and we'll decide what we want to do from here. We want to move on to other shit, or if we want to watch the fucking interview. So yeah, there's the poll. I'll take a look at the results in a second. Nick wants to send a fucking meme. This is gonna be AIDS.
I mean, people seem to be interested in this. I mean, we're already at 300 viewers.
Yeah, I didn't expect so many people to tune in tonight, so we'll see if people want to give it a watch. Tommy says you don't have to, it will not be good radio, but you should watch this on your own time. Oh, for sure, I'll watch it on my own time. I just want to see if people here want to give it a go, or if, you know, we want to move on to other shit. I'm down for whatever, to be honest with you. I'm here all night. What is this shit that Nick tossed here? Each of the 4 ghosts in the game has both Japanese and English names. In Japan, they start as Fickle, Chaser, Ambusher, and Stupid. Their English names are Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Einabber deleted his Twitter account on July 25th in the middle of the Slasso accuser's backlash, and we'll never know what incriminating evidence was inside of his DMs at the time. He checked in with Nick, Bowblax, Augie, and Tommy multiple times throughout. He was lying through his teeth and likely relaying information back to parties involved before it was ultimately found out he himself was involved. This is like, see, we're watching.
That's a good meme. That's a good meme right there.
We're watching the CIA documentary shit. And Nick's over here trying to figure out what incriminating information Einabber had in his Twitter DMs.
Yeah, let's go back to the real stories. You know,
let's
tone it back and go back to YouTube, dude. Fuck this real life shit, dude. I want to talk about gay YouTube drama, dude. Let's go back.
Fuck this gay YouTube drama. All right, I'm refreshing the interview right now. We got 20 votes so far. People saying yes, 86%. Damn. Jesus Christ, people want to see the interview.
Dude, people are hyped about this topic. I mean, it is interesting, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm pretty intrigued by it.
I think, yeah, interview guys. I guess it's we'll give it a go then. We're now a movie stream. Now the interview is an hour. I see the interview. The documentary is about an hour long, so we've been going on for an hour now. So I don't know if we'll watch the whole thing or maybe we'll cut it off or something. It could be boring. I really don't know, but I'll go ahead and paste it here. Fuck it. Get some popcorn. It's time to...
Hell yeah, get your popcorn out, boys.
Get your fucking popcorn. Get yourself a drink. Let's see what we got here. Let me just refresh the poll one more time.
RFC movie night. Let's go.
Last documentary we talked...
if you're lost, by the way, this is really going to tie shit back up for you. Movie screen. There we go.
In our last documentary, we talked about powerful billionaires...
Oh, is it not sharing for you? Give me a second here. Yeah, you're looking at the movie. You're not even looking at this shit. There we go. All right, guys, let's watch. Fuck. This is like in my science.
Fuck, everything's broken.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, this is like my favorite part of like science class in high school is when we just got to watch Netflix documentaries.
Oh yeah.
Instead of actually have to do shit.
In our last documentary,
I barely even paid attention, dude.
All right, let's give it a watch.
Powerful billionaire and registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and showed how Epstein and his co-conspirators were able to escape punishment for their role in abusing over 40 young girls. We noted that Epstein and people like him do not act alone in their efforts to feed their depraved desires. In Epstein's case, he had an inner circle of people who helped him acquire young girls. In other cases, there exist networks of individuals helping to pressure or even kidnap young children and force them into sexual bondage. This time, we are going to explore the story of a cult that was suspected of international human trafficking in 1987. The Finders cult was a young group of men, women, and children who claimed to be nothing more than former hippies living an alternative lifestyle and practicing alternative parenting.
Alternative lifestyle.
The Finders were founded by
yeah, that's quite an alternative lifestyle you got there, dude. That's quite the alternative.
Who believed in turning his life and the lives of those around him into a constant game or experiment. Although more than 30 years have passed since the Finders made their way to the front page of newspapers all over the world, questions still remain. Did the game callers' games involve trafficking of children? What exactly were the Finders finding? Why did this story make mainstream headlines and then disappear in less than a week? Was the story part of the moral panic of the 1980s or something more? We will answer these questions, and most importantly, we ask, who will find what the Finders hide?
Mr. Mediker.
As we examine the story of the Finders cult, I would like to make all of our viewers aware that everything in this film is documented and can be confirmed by looking at our transcript and sources. This story deals with accusations of satanic activity, child trafficking, and intelligence operations. We take these claims seriously and went to great lengths to confirm the information we are about to present to you. On a chilly February morning in 1987, an anonymous caller tells the Tallahassee Police Department that two well-dressed men are at a local park with 6 kids and a blue van. The children are described as looking disheveled with potential signs of abuse. Tallahassee police arrive and question Douglas E. Ammerman and Michael Houlihan. The two men say they are taking the kids to a school for brilliant children in Mexico. The men also say the children are being weaned from their mothers. Authorities eventually take the men and children into custody. A search of the van turns up 20 floppy computer disks, a TSR-80 computer, and a, quote, device that police say could be used to hook into a computer in another location by a telephone, end quote. Immediately, it becomes clear this case is not like any other. Following the arrest, the Associated Press reports that police had moved the 6 children from a shelter after receiving a half-dozen phone calls threatening the kids. The children were moved to an undisclosed location.
They take the kids in, and they immediately get death threats sent to the kids.
Location where they were being protected by armed guards.
All right.
Yikes.
When interviewed by the police, the kids say the men are their teachers, that they have been living in a house with other children and adults. The police report also notes the kids are eating a raw food diet, covered in bug bites, and only fed as a reward for good behavior. The children are unaware of modern technology, including phones, televisions, hot water, staplers, typewriters, and electricity. The oldest child, Mary, says they receive instructions from a man they call a game caller or a game leader, the founder of the Finders, also known as Marion Petty. By Thursday, February 5th, Tallahassee police confirm the children and men are a part of a group known as the Finders. U.S. District Court records in Washington indicate a confidential police source previously told authorities the Finders were a cult that conducted brainwashing techniques at a warehouse and apartment in Washington, D.C. This source tells of being recruited by the Finders with promises of, quote, financial reward and sexual gratification, end quote, and of being invited by one member to explore Satanism with them. At this point, officials with the U.S. Customs Service Agency join the investigation due to suspicion that the potential crimes may have crossed state or national borders. The U.S. Attorney's Office and the Federal Bureau of Investigations are also said to be investigating the case.
Finders? Jesus, that scared the shit out of me. Thank you for the 5.
After learning the children are based in the D.C. area, the Tallahassee Police Department contacts D.C. Metropolitan Police to establish the identities of the children. Tallahassee Police learn that D.C. police are already aware of the Finders. On Friday, February 6th, Virginia State Police raid a 90-acre farm owned by Marion Petty in rural Madison County, Virginia. Neighbors of the farm children were often brought to the farm in vans, usually crying. An FBI report states that, quote, evidence of a satanic cult ritual was discovered, end quote. The same report notes that all reports regarding Finders are to be classified secret. Meanwhile, D.C. Metro Police and U.S. Customs Service agents raid other Finders properties, including a duplex apartment building and a warehouse in Washington, D.C. Police reports and articles from 1987 indicate that the D.C. police removed large plastic bags filled with color slides, photographs, and photographic contact sheets from the warehouse. Some of the photos were of naked children. U.S. Customs spokesman David Hoover tells the Post, quote, we're not saying it's pornographic, but it has all the earmarks.
Wait. Naked children, but we're not saying it's pornographic. What does that mean?
What the hell is this? Some fucking lolly hentai argument going on here, dude?
They found
1,000 years old in the lore.
Describes some of the photos as showing blood rituals involving children slaughtering goats while adults in white robes watch. It also describes that they found instructions on how to purchase children. The importance of this report, written by U.S. Customs Service agent Raymond J. Martinez, will become clear as we move on. The Customs Service then claimed to be looking into allegations of child pornography. Police spokesman Scott Hunt states that the Finders may have, quote, been accustomed to selling or smuggling the children of its members out of the country, end quote. Then Captain William White of the D.C. Police Department declines to speculate on what the possibilities might be, but reports written by D.C. Police state that law enforcement believe the possibilities include kidnapping or some type of international market for children. Police investigator Cheryl Wignan says more than one of the children has been sexually abused, but she won't say exactly how many. Genghis Plato, also known as Robert Gardner Terrell, was the spokesperson for the Finders and the owner of a D.C. house that police say was used by members of the group. Terrell tells reporters the group are simply, quote, rational people and not devil worshippers or child molesters. Then another spokesman for the Finders named Diane Sherwood states the group are, quote, hardworking with a Protestant ethic. We don't even think we are a group, she says. We are just a network of co-operators.
Just a Protestant ethic,
By
you know?
Monday, February 9th, 5 days after the children and their 2 male chaperones were arrested, Washington Metro Police announced they have found no evidence of wrongdoing or satanic activity by the Finders.
They found
no evidence of wrongdoing.
They found pornographic images of children and pictures of images of children slaughtering goats while men in white robes watch. They say it's just good Protestant values. We don't even see ourselves as a group, but just Protestant values. Police are like, there's nothing here.
Yeah, there's nothing here, dude. God's on their side, dude. Don't worry.
Buses.
No one's the wrongdoing.
Vans of children, screaming children in the middle of the night, brought into this bar. Nah, there's nothing going on. Don't worry about it.
Health officials in Florida then say they have no evidence of sexual abuse of the children. D.C. Metro Police Chief Maurice Turner Jr. states that the department has not uncovered any evidence to, quote, corroborate allegations made by an informant that the organization is a cult and that its activities involve satanic rituals, end quote. By Thursday, February 12th, Gary Shepard of the FBI's Washington field office says the FBI investigation has, quote, not uncovered any evidence of federal violations, end quote. But according to the New York Times, quote, the statement from the Metropolitan Police Department conflicts with accounts from police in Tallahassee, Florida, where the children were found, unwashed and hungry. Officials there say that morning, at least 2 of the children had signs of sexual abuse. Despite the initial reports, by the end of the week, headlines are reporting that charges are dropped and that the whole situation was a giant misunderstanding. Just like that, it's gone from the news. Now, to be fair, it's true that a so-called moral or satanic panic seemed to grip the United States in the 1970s and 80s, where parents were suspecting all kinds of people being involved in devil-worshipping cults or child trafficking networks. And although the vast majority of these cases have been dismissed as paranoia, the story of the Finders deserves a deeper look. Let's start by examining the available law enforcement documentation on the Finders. Documenting the Finders. The Finders cult incident in Florida took place more than 30 years ago. Although the mainstream version of events says the whole thing was blown out of proportion, a reading of the reports from the Tallahassee Police Department, the FBI, and U.S. Customs Service leaves more questions than answers. The Customs Service report has been widely reported and circulated, and the FBI documents were released through Freedom of Information Act requests. In 2018, thanks to the work of an activist, the 75 pages of Tallahassee police reports were also finally released to the public. This is the story of those documents. Tallahassee Police Department reports. On Wednesday, February 4th at 4:50 p.m., Tallahassee police officer Tony Mashburn responds to an anonymous call regarding 2 well-dressed men seen supervising 6 children at Myers Park in Tallahassee, Florida. The detective files a report with the department following the incident. His report serves as one piece of historical documentation of the case of the Finders. Mashburn's report states that the, quote, children were very dirty and unkept, with, quote, bug bites on their entire body and scratches on their leg. Mashburn also reports, quote, when asked about the parents of the children, suspect number 1 became very evasive and stated that the children's parents were in D.C. Suspect number 2 refused to give this writer any information, and he pretended to faint when he was told he was under arrest.
Wait, so
the second report...
This is raw data? Or is this... Because this... They said this is an actual report, and then Tommy said this could be, like, just raw data. So, like, even if just this happened, and this is not raw data... and this is like a real report, if just this happened with nothing else, then like, yeah, something really fucking fucked happened here. Like, bite marks, scratches, signs of sexual abuse, starving, just even finding the children outright proves that something bad happened, or something fucked happened. And the government dropped all the investigation, and they're covering up. So there's definitely like shit tons of validity to the story if what was just said in the video is not raw data.
Written by Tallahassee police officer Judy Sokoki notes that the oldest child, Mary, does not know her last name, but knew that one of the men was her father. She states that the men had several aliases. When asked where they were going, the children say they do not know, they were just, quote, going different places and staying at campgrounds. The children also say they hadn't seen their mothers for 2 months, since before Christmas, because they were being weaned from their mothers. The report states that the kids told officers the adults in their community had to do what the game caller told them to do, and that the kids did what the adults told them to. The children say they were not allowed in the house. The kids also told authorities that the adults communicated with the game caller, aka Marion Petty, via a computer in the van. Later in the report, it notes that the children claimed Marion Petty, quote, owns a man named Steve. End quote. When eldest child Mary was questioned about sexual abuse, she became very evasive. She said there were no, quote, bad touches between the children and adults. and reportedly became fidgety and wanted the interview to end. The same police report mentions that an official with the Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services, or HRS, said the 2 children were confirmed cases of sexual abuse. Jane Patia of HRS stated that a Dr. Mora had found one of the children lacked, quote, anal spectral control consistent with acts of sodomy. Also, one of the girls had signs consistent with vaginal penetration by the fingers. On February 8th, Tallahassee police filed another report mentioning a curious incident involving a computer found on Florida State University campus in front of the library. Apparently, on Thursday, February 5th, a student named Robert Sorkin spotted the computer inside of a phone booth and decided to take it home. After he saw details relating to the Tallahassee police investigation, he turned it over to law enforcement, who determined the owner of the computer was, quote, obviously persons who are involved with a group called the Finders, end quote. A similar TSR-80 computer was also found in the group's van. Once the warehouses in D.C. were raided, D.C. Metro Police shared the details of their findings with the Tallahassee Police Department. In one report, D.C. Detective Bill Cagney describes finding a library of books which included books, quote, concerning mind control, end quote. By February 8th, Detective Jim Bradley of the D.C. Metro Police says he finds no evidence of satanic activity at either D.C. residence. On February 10th, the Tallahassee Police are told by Lieutenant Lee Hart of the Culpeper, Virginia Police Department that he has a contact within the Finders. This contact alleges that Marion Petty has notified all Finders to flee and hide. Curiously, Lieutenant Cart tells the TPD that Petty would, quote, probably go to Andrews Air Force Base and get a military plane to China, end quote. The strange thing is there are several mentions of connections to China elsewhere in the Tallahassee Police Department report and in the U.S. Customs report. Why were the Finders men carrying a Chinese-English dictionary with them? Mary said she learned to count to 10 in Chinese from a Chinese man at the warehouse, and, as we'll see in a moment, the U.S. Customs report on the Finders mentioned that children were being ordered from a contact in Hong Kong. When the Tallahassee police are finally able to determine and locate the mothers of the children, the women deny any allegations of satanic activity or sexual abuse of the children by the group. The women claim they don't know why the men have multiple fake IDs or why they use the traveling to a school for brilliant children in Mexico excuse. The mothers tell police their lifestyle does not abuse children, but instead holds them in high esteem. This seems difficult to square with the fact that the kids were found covered in bites and scratches and malnourished with little food. The women go on to describe the Finders' lifestyle as rejecting private property in favor of communal property and centering around, quote, ongoing loyalty, dependence, devotion to each other. The police report's description of the group's parenting style resembles modern unschooling methods. This hands-on method includes trips to the zoo, learning in nature, and apparently learning how to slaughter and skin a goat. When confronted, the women say the white robes the men were wearing during the goat slaughter were actually sheets used to cover their clothes from blood. The mothers also contradict the children by saying the kids are allowed to eat whenever they want rather than at predetermined meal times. On Wednesday, February 11th, Assistant Investigator Rick Huffman is made lead investigator. By February 24th, Huffman has officially ended the Tallahassee Police Department's investigation into the Finders. Huffman writes, quote, as to whether the children had actually been abused or neglected at the time of arrest seems to hinge on whether the children being dirty, possibly hungry, and living under camping conditions constitutes abuse or neglect. Huffman concludes, quote, this investigator has learned of no group or individual actions which appear abusive or neglectful. Huffman does not mention the reports of sexual abuse by doctors with HRS. And with that, the Tallahassee Police Department's investigation into the Finders cult came to an end. The other main source documents are a series of memos from the U.S. Customs Service, the predecessor to the current U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency. The memos were written by U.S. Customs Agent Raymond J. Martinez. In these pages are the most damning accounts of alleged trafficking of children and potential connections to intelligence agencies. Martinez filed 3 memos, 2 of which describe his experience participating in the search of the warehouse in D.C. alongside the Metro Police. Once the Customs Service was notified that the children were allegedly en route to Mexico, a customs investigation was launched. The Metro Police reportedly contacted Customs because the agency maintains a network of child pornography investigators. Martinez notes that his office was contacted by Detective Jim Bradley with the Metro Police Department because he believed the Tallahassee case was strongly related to a case he was investigating in D.C. Bradley also told Martinez that he originally investigated the 2 addresses connected to the Finders in December of 1986, 2 months before the incident in Florida. An informant had given Bradley information regarding a cult known as the Finders operating various businesses out of a warehouse. The information was specific in describing blood rituals and sexual orgies involving children, and a yet unsolved murder in which the finders were alleged to be involved. Martinez's report states that during the execution of the warrant on the warehouse, he was, quote, able to observe and access the entire building, end quote. As authorities searched the building, they found tons of documents, a large library, a sauna, computers, maps with locations highlighted, a room with video recording equipment, and much more. Martinez says his search of the documents revealed the following: detailed instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes.
Nothing to see here.
Instructions on the impregnation of female members of the finders. Telex messages using MCI mail and early version.
Instructions on the impregnation of female members of the finders.
Oh.
What fucking more do you need?
Version of email. One such telex message specifically ordering the purchase of 2 children in Hong Kong to be arranged through a contact in the Chinese embassy. Another telex message expressing interest in bank secrecy situations. Documents identifying interest in high-tech transfers to the UK and numerous properties under the control of the finders. Documents
There's just so much like potential proof here. Like even if some of this is like raw data, like if at least one of or two of the things being said within the 60 minutes of this video so far is true, which is going to be much more because it's like an hour long. Yeah, like this is like
this is Jesus.
Explosives and
bad
invasion
shit
of law enforcement.
for sure happened. There's no
a
doubt
detailed
about it.
summary of the events
I'm
surrounding
confused
the
though why
like
we had this conversation with Tommy and stuff, and he was saying raw data, and he told us to watch this, and this just kind of, I mean, this
it kind of just confirms that Medicare was right to like jump the gun on
Tommy's
saying
criticism
that most
came,
of it is correct.
You know, Tommy's criticism came in, and people were calling me out in chat. They were like, "Why aren't you calling out Tommy?" I'm not gonna go ape shit for no reason. I'm gonna listen to, both sides.
Yeah, I wanted to hear him out for sure.
But I'm listening to this right now. I've not been given much commentary. I've just been kind of taking it in, and I mean, I listen. On one hand, Tommy's main criticism of Medicare was criticizing the sort of, Medicare saying like, "Oh, remember how ridiculous that satanic fever was? It turns out it was real." I took that as a joke,
Yeah.
And then he's saying raw data and shit. I mean, they have literal like instructions. Instructions on the impregnation of female members of the finders.
Yeah.
On top of
I don't know.
hidden tunnels underneath preschools in Washington, D.C., where they're based. It's just like, there's just so much here. I mean,
I guess the satanic panic comment just really got to him. And
to be fair to Tommy, he did say that there's definitely a story here. He wasn't discrediting that, but
yeah,
I don't know.
It's just like he says, like obviously we can't take everything at face value, which I 100% agree when it comes to like anything. But like with this, it's like how much benefit of the doubt can you give? Like how much of a chance is there that nothing happened and that the police were 100% right and they're not trying to cover anything up? Like with all this evidence, like or all this like raw data, potential evidence, whatever you want to call it, reports, it just seems so fucking unlikely. I think it's pretty much impossible, honestly.
Previous night's arrest and of the 2 adults and 6 children in a Tallahassee park. And a set of instructions which appeared to be broadcast via a computer network which advised the participants to move the children and keep them moving through different jurisdictions and instructions on how to avoid police attention. The following day, Friday, February 6, 1987, Customs Agent Martinez meets Detective Bradley at the warehouse again. Quote, "I was again granted unlimited access to the premises," he writes. This time, Martinez says he observes, quote, "numerous documents which describe explicit sexual conduct between the members of the community known as the Finders." He also says he saw a large collection of photos of unknown people, including some nude photos of people believed to be members of the Finders. There were numerous photos of children, some nude, at least one of which was a photo of a child on display and appearing to accent the child's genitals.
Disgusting. It's not looking good.
I was only able to examine a very small amount of the photos at this time. He also states that another officer showed him a photo album that contained a series of photos of adults and children dressed in white sheets participating in a blood ritual. Martinez says the photos showed the execution, disembowelment, skinning, and dismemberment of 2 goats at the hands of the children. Other documents include files relating to activities of the organization in different parts of the world, including London, Germany, the Bahamas, Japan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Africa, Costa Rica, and Europe. Martinez reports seeing one file entitled Pentagon Break-In. He also claims a Metro Police Department officer told him the group maintained intelligence on private families. The officer told Martinez about a game the finders would play in which the group would respond to local newspaper advertisements for babysitters, tutors, etc., and then a member of the finders would gather as much information as possible about the habits, identity, occupation, etc. of the family. Martinez's file memo was filed April 13, 1987. 2 months after his original memos, Martinez reasserts his view that, quote, numerous documents were discovered which appeared to be concerned with international trafficking in children, high-tech transfer to the UK, and international transfer of currency. Martinez says he talked with Detective Bradley on March 31st regarding a meeting to review the documents seized during the execution of the 2 search warrants. When Martinez arrives for the meeting on April 2nd, Detective Bradley is not available. Martinez writes that he, quote, spoke to a third party who was willing to discuss the case with me on a strictly off-the-record basis, end quote. Agent Martinez is notified that all passport data gathered during the investigation was given to the U.S. State Department. The State Department then tells the Metro Police that all travel by the passport holders was within the law and no action was to be taken. Martinez notes that, quote, this includes travel to Moscow, North Korea, and North Vietnam from the late 50s to mid-1970s. Countries engaged in conflict with the United States at the time. This unnamed third party also tells Martinez that, quote, the investigation into the activity of the finders had become a CIA internal matter, end quote. Martinez's final statements reveal, the MPD report has been classified secret and was not available for review. I was advised that the FBI had withdrawn the investigation several weeks prior and that the FBI Foreign Counterintelligence Division had directed MPD not to advise the FBI Washington field office of anything that had transpired. No further information will be available. No further action will be taken. Just like that, with a disregard for credible reports that merited further investigation, the FBI, the Tallahassee Police, and the U.S. Customs Service were done investigating the finders. At least, for the moment. Not everyone was convinced that the case against the finders was over and done with. A 1993 report from U.S. News & World Report states that an unnamed Tallahassee investigator accused the police of dropping the case, quote, like a hot rock, end quote. Apparently, the Department of Justice, too, was uncertain whether the case was successfully investigated because in 1993, it was reported that the DOJ had begun an investigation into whether the Central Intelligence Agency was involved in some kind of cover-up. A December 1993 Associated Press report states, quote, the Justice Department said Friday it is investigating allegations the CIA used a front company run by a commune to train agency employees and that the CIA blocked investigation of the group. The AP also notes that a CIA spokesman said the CIA sent some employees to a company called Future Enterprises Incorporated for computer training in the 1980s. The spokesman claimed the CIA did not know about any connections between the company and the finders. The vice president of Future Enterprises at the time, Joseph Marinich, said the company had trained CIA employees in computer use and continues to do so, but that it had never been a front for anyone. However, a connection between the finders and Future Enterprises appeared through Finders spokesman Robert Terrell, who worked at Future Enterprises at the time of the Florida incident. Terrell was fired by Marinich once he found out about the finders. Oddly enough, Future Enterprises currently maintains contracts with the Defense Intelligence Agency, a U.S. government agency which focuses on gathering intelligence on the military intentions and capabilities of foreign governments and non-state actors. The Associated Press quoted a report from the Washington Times as stating that Martinez had apparently sent his reports to Congress calling for investigations and had provided documents suggesting the CIA was blocking investigations of the finders. In a mind-blowing admission, the Washington Times stated, quote, a later customs report says the CIA admitted to owning the Finders organization as a front for a domestic computer training operation, but that it had gone bad, end quote. The U.S. News & World Report article mentions that Representative Charlie Rose of North Carolina and Florida Representative Tom Lewis were calling for an investigation into the CIA. Could our own government have something to do with this Finders organization and turn their backs on these children? That's what all the evidence points to, and there's a lot of evidence. I can tell you this, we've got a lot of people scrambling, and that wouldn't be happening if there was nothing here. The article also notes that law enforcement sources say some of the finders are listed in the FBI's classified counterintelligence files. Unfortunately, the FBI files which have been released are heavily redacted. Still, these files do reveal important details. The FBI files on the finders. In April 1994, the FBI requested all available documents on the finders investigation and received 21.
Well, this video came out in March
2019, yeah. So the documents have been out for a while.
The documents were just dumped last week.
Wait.
The significantly more documents. This is just little information.
Oh, yeah. So it's just additional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Documents from the U.S. State Department. These documents were considered unclassified by 2014. These documents confirm that in 1993, the Department of Justice ordered a preliminary investigation into allegations that the finders were involved in sexual abuse of children and whether or not the intelligence community played a role in covering it up. The name of the person making these allegations is redacted, but it becomes clear the documents are referencing U.S. Customs Agent Raymond Martinez and his report from the warehouse raid. Despite the heavy redacting, the files make it clear the FBI was taking note that Martinez had reached out to Congress calling for an investigation. One portion of the documents mention a Customs Service special agent who wrote a report claiming to have seen computer equipment with instructions on, quote, obtaining children for unspecified purposes, end quote. The report also mentions impregnating female members of the finders, instructions on kidnapping, buying, and trading children. Finally, the report states that this unknown person, who is more than likely Raymond Martinez, claimed that another unnamed person worked with the State Department and the FBI's Counterintelligence Division to cover up the crimes of the finders. This memo, dated March 9, 1987, relates what was taking place behind the scenes during the weeks following the official end of the investigation into the finders. Again, this document is so heavily redacted, it's hard to determine exactly what was said, but what is clear is that someone with the Metropolitan Police Department stated that none of the items claimed by Raymond Martinez were found at either finder's property and that there was no evidence of child exploitation, kidnapping, and no instructions on buying children. The redacted document notes that a DC Metro Police Sergeant John H. Stitcher had been told by an unknown person to step away from the investigation into the finders. However, another document claims that this never happened. It seems likely that Martinez and Stitcher would have met and discussed what Martinez saw and perhaps the fact that Stitcher claimed he was told to back off the investigation into the finders. Either way, the FBI files note that by 1993, Sergeant John H. Stitcher was dead. Another report from the FBI special agent in charge says that, quote, the bottom line was that the Tallahassee investigation was not impeded or influenced by any agency, end quote. An unnamed special agent with the FBI's Washington Metropolitan Field Office and an officer with the DC Metro Police were both interviewed in November of 1993 and claimed that they had no direct knowledge of evidence indicating child abuse or exploitation or interference from the U.S. intelligence community. Martinez stated that he believed he was correct in his original report. The FBI files show the Bureau searched the government's internal databases for names thought to have been used by the finders, including Finders Transnational, Finders Transnational Ragged Mountain, Women's Network Service, General Scientific Corporation, and the aforementioned Future Enterprises. As with Future Enterprises, it is believed these businesses may have been fronts operated by the finders. After all of this, the initial incident in Tallahassee, the raids of the warehouse and apartments, the end of the investigation, the two male members of the finders were released from jail. A Washington Post article from June 1, 1987 mentions that 4 of the children were returned to their mothers, while the other 2 were placed in foster homes.
That's what Tommy was talking about.
The article also notes that 2 of the mothers followed instructions given by Petty and refused to get a lawyer or respond to the courts, and instead left Florida and returned to Washington, D.C. After interviewing dozens of people directly involved in the case and reviewing hundreds of documents, the DOJ concluded there was no evidence of child abuse or trafficking, satanic cult activity, or law enforcement complicity. In the minds of the authorities, the case was closed. However, as we have uncovered here, there are many details that ought not be forgotten. While it may be easy to dismiss these claims as nothing more than conspiracy, it's difficult to ignore the statements from the Tallahassee Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services regarding the signs of sexual abuse. There's also the original reports from Customs Agent Raymond Martinez describing detailed information related to trafficking. When asked for a comment about his initial report, Martinez agreed to speak to us as long as we did not record. In one email exchange, Martinez makes it clear that he stands by his original report and does not believe anyone will be held responsible. On November 1st, 2018, Martinez wrote, quote, "Nothing's ever come of any info I've provided over the years, except professional grief. I have no delusions of anyone ever being held accountable for what I know happened. Without that potential, I really don't see the point." Unfortunately, before we could uncover any more details about what exactly he saw, the former customs agent backed out and ended communication. Regarding Martinez's statements about professional grief, court records show that in 1994 he was accused of improperly disclosing case information to a close co-worker of an individual under investigation. He was reassigned from the position of criminal investigator and his pay was docked. Whether Martinez believed this was done in retaliation or not, we don't know because he refused to respond to any more questions. Is it really possible that Martinez imagined the whole thing? Could the doctors have been mistaken when observing signs of sexual abuse on 2 of the kids? It's possible. Anything's possible, including the possibility that the agents in the FBI, Customs Service, and Metro Police covered up what U.S. Customs Agent Martinez saw and then made him look incompetent.
I think this part right here is what Tommy's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that can be applied to anything.
I think
though,
that's
like
what he's saying
possible.
is, I think that's his raw data argument. Is what he's saying right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's also true that none of the former members of the Finders have come forward to say the group was involved in child trafficking or sexual abuse. Even former members who sued the group and had plenty of criticisms claim there was no signs of sexual abuse. One would imagine that even one member would leak the truth to the public if there was indeed something more to the story. However, one could also argue that anyone who is involved with the Finders and their alleged activity would probably be well aware of how connected and powerful the group is and might be too terrified to blow the whistle. To understand the Finders, we need to examine the people involved in the day-to-day activities of the cult.
Big Beerus says, not Augie, he was stressing it in the tunnels. He's talking about the preschool case. When in regards to that.
Specifically, to find what the Finders hide, it's imperative to study the founder of the group, Marion Petty. The following details are taken from the public record on Petty, as well as interviews with members of the Finders. Who was Marion Petty? Little is known about the life of Marion D. Petty, the mysterious founder of the Finders. Before his death in 2004, it had been widely reported that Petty was a retired Air Force Master Sergeant who spent years rubbing elbows with the top brass and the United States intelligence community. The true nature of Petty's connections to these intelligence agencies remains a central mystery
And that part's pretty big right there.
to the case of the Finders cult. After the Tallahassee arrests in 1987, the New York Times referred to Petty as a, quote, charismatic leader who urged his followers to study a doctrine that stressed self-exploration and futurism, end quote. During the investigation, Priscilla Coates, president of the Bay Area chapter of the Cult Awareness Network, told the Associated Press that the Finders were not a satanic cult, but rather, quote, just a weird situation where Petty controlled others and made everything a game. Media reports from the 1980s state that the Finders first evolved out of the human potential movement of the 1970s, a movement based on the idea that an extraordinary potential lie within each person waiting to be unleashed. Petty, who was also known as the student, the stroller, the pathfinder, or the game caller, claims that he had been hosting parties and gatherings of like-minded people since the 1930s. In a 1996 interview with the Washington City paper and a 1998 interview with Steam Shovel Press, Marion Petty discussed his early years. Quote, I've been keeping open house to fools since the 30s. I rented 2 apartments in Washington and had open house. Anyone that wanted could come and stay with me. I'm still doing it. End quote. In fact, Petty told both the Steam Shovel Press and the Washington City paper that since World War I, he kept open house, quote, mainly to intelligence and counterintelligence people in Washington, end quote. Petty claimed that his goal was to know everything and say nothing. Quote, I run a private intelligence game and I send people out undercover to find out various things. I've been investigating the CIA before it was the CIA, when it was the OSS, Petty stated in reference to the predecessor of the CIA, the Office of Strategic Services. In 1998, Petty told the Steam Shovel Press that in the 1960s, investigators were monitoring him for 4 years. He claimed that the investigators accused him of being a drug dealer and then a front for the CIA. However, Petty claimed that eventually the investigators left him alone. Petty also stated that he tried all of his life to get behind the scenes in the CIA. Quote, I sent my wife in as a spy to spy on the CIA for me. She was very happy about it, happy to tell me everything she found out. She was in a key place, you know, with the records, and she could find out things for me. And my son worked for Air America, which was a propriety of the CIA. There are some connections, but not to me personally." End quote. It is true that Petty's wife worked for the CIA and that one of his sons worked for Air America, a CIA front accused of trafficking opium. Despite his long-term interest in intelligence agencies and his family members' involvement with intelligence agencies, Petty swears he himself is not a member of the intelligence community. However, further details of Petty's involvement with U.S. intelligence services were revealed in the late 1980s. In 1994, journalist Daniel Brandt wrote an article titled "Marion Petty and His Washington, D.C. Finders, Kooks or Spooks," detailing a meeting with two members of the Finders back in 1984. Brandt says at that time they were going by the name the Information Bank. 3 years later, Brandt was sent a 3-page memo titled "Investigative Leads" of unknown origin, which outlined Marion Petty's alleged intelligence links. Although the source of the memo remains anonymous, some of the data has been independently verified. According to the memo, in 1939, Petty met a Chinese agent operating under journalistic cover and remained in close contact with him throughout World War II. Petty began his intelligence career by working with various OSS contacts. After the war, Petty's Chinese contact introduced him to Charles Marsh at the National Press Club. Marsh was a journalist connected to LBJ and FDR and often suspected of ties to the CIA. The memo alleges that in 1946, while Petty was working as a chauffeur to General Ira Aker, Marsh arranged for him to be trained in counterintelligence. Petty received intelligence training at Georgetown University in 1956 and was sent to U.S. Air Force Intelligence Training School in Frankfurt, Germany. Through Marsh, Petty got his wife a job with the CIA from 1957 to early 1961. The memo states that Petty's handler was Colonel Leonard N. Wagner. Wagner advised Petty to resign from the military and surround himself with kooks so that he could infiltrate the Beat, Human Potential, and New Age movements. Wagner encouraged Petty to recruit people from youth hostels and universities. Petty was also instructed to recruit a network of agents in Europe. In the 1960s, Petty apparently fulfilled this mandate by making connections with the Beat movement. The memo also alleges that Petty penetrated the Human Potential movement by setting up Ken Casey, the famous novelist and countercultural figure, as a prominent guru. Finally, the memo claims that in 1979, Petty recruited John J. Cox, a computer specialist and founder of General Scientific, a computer firm specializing in classified defense contracts. Cox trained several of Petty's finders in computer programming and communications technologies. From the 1980s on, the finders claim they used Petty's international network and cutting-edge computer technology to perform acts of freelance journalism for finders' fees. They deny any allegations of child trafficking, Satanism, or intelligence operations. So what exactly were the finders, and what were they finding? Researcher Wendell Minnick, author of Spies and Provocateurs, an encyclopedia of espionage and covert action, said he spent 2 years researching the finders, but after running up $1,000 in phone bills and running into too many dead ends, he concluded his investigation without much new information. Quote, "The finders would love you to think they're a CIA front, but I would say they're really nothing. You're going to hear a lot of bullshit on the finders, because they lie. These are dysfunctional adults, but they're all working their asses off. They're constantly working on some project. If you have a cult, the best way to control people is to keep them busy, to keep their minds occupied. If you have people standing around doing nothing, then they start thinking." End quote. To learn more about Marion Petty, the finders, and their relationship with the intelligence community, I sat down with longtime spokesman for the finders, Robert Toby Terrell. Terrell wrote a book about his experiences with the finders called The Game Caller, featuring one of the few known pictures of Marion Petty.
Toby Terrell, Tobeterrell. That's my real name. My legal name that I was born with is Robert Gardner
Jesus Christ.
Terrell Jr. I worked for the IRS for 9 years and then left and went on my own and made enough money that I was able to retire at age 35. And I found by that time that I had done everything that my culture had programmed me to do. I was basically programmed to participate in the existing culture and make money and get a wife and 2 kids and move to the suburbs and then move into a bigger house and all of those kind of things. But that didn't seem to satisfy some deeper urge.
Terrell talks of meeting Marion Petty through a mutual friend and being invited to come visit the community that Petty called the New Ark.
One thing led to another, and I went back to visit him again and realized that he was a spiritual teacher. Based on the questions that he asked me. And so I asked him some questions as well. And then I was in transition. I'd been married for 12 years, had a couple of kids, was living in Chevy Chase in a very nice house in a very nice suburb. But it was a phase in my life where it was time to develop my spiritual nature. I'd been a householder, and that was a good phase. So to make that a shorter story, I moved in to the New Ark and never moved out.
Terrell embraced the Finder's life, and after a divorce from his wife, he put his life savings into the Invisible Bank, a communal fund where everyone was allowed to contribute and take as they needed. Using these funds, Terrell helped Petty purchase the Finder's properties in D.C. for the group's daily activities. He describes life in the Finders as a constant game where Petty encouraged members to live one day at a time. The group was ran by Petty and everyone submitted to his rules. Terrell said every day the Finders would ask Petty to be the game caller, and then the group would follow his instructions.
He would say something like, okay, take off with no money and don't come back till you have $100. And no instructions other than that. And then you just leave and do whatever it took to get $100. Not that we were trying to get the $100, it was trying to get the experience.
Terrell confirmed that Marion Petty spent his military career working closely with generals and intelligence officials, and that Petty worked as a chauffeur.
He already knew the first chauffeur, and that's where he'd gotten the information about the new chauffeur's job. And he said that he just stood there and gazed into the eyes of Henry Arnold until Henry Arnold consented. And that's how he spent World War II, as the chauffeur for all of the leading generals of World War II, which was a wonderful job because he knew what was going on behind the scenes. He was carrying the vice president or these various generals around town in the back seat of his Cadillac. And during this time, he was a thrifty guy, and he'd saved up his money and began buying land in the Virginia mountains, which was very cheap at that time. So he had accumulated 600 acres of land on the chauffeur's salary, which is no easy feat. So when Finders came together, he contributed that 600 acres of land, and I contributed the cash from. They had some cash already, but that was my contribution.
While Terrell claims that Petty bought the land by being thrifty and saving his chauffeur's salary, the anonymous investigative leads memo claims that it was in fact Charles Marsh who supplied the funds to Petty so he could purchase hundreds of acres of farmland in Madison and Rappahannock counties in Virginia. This is where Petty would start building his cult. During the research for this film, I was sent an interview with Finders member Michael Houlihan, aka Michael Howell, one of the men arrested in Tallahassee in 1987. In the interview, Howell emphatically states that the children were not abused, there were no blood rituals or satanic activity. Both Howell and Robert Terrell state that the Tallahassee incident was the result of a moral panic of the 1980s and bad reporting by the media. Terrell says the trouble began when a disgruntled ex-girlfriend of one of the Finders went to the police and spread false rumors about the group's alleged involvement in satanic activity.
And she went to the DC police and told them that we were a satanic cult. And so they opened an investigation. I don't know what a satanic cult is, or even whether it's against the law. As evidence of the fact that we were a satanic cult, she took a police officer into the park. Our apartment buildings were right next to Glover Archibald Park, which is a 400-acre park in downtown D.C. It's a wonderful place. And if you walk out the back door of our apartment buildings, you walk onto a trail in Glover Archibald Park, and she took the police officer there and showed him that there was a circle of stones where someone had had a campfire. And this was the evidence that we were a satanic cult, that we had campfires. It was not us. I mean, I don't know where that came from, but that was enough evidence for them to open an investigation.
This original investigation mentioned by Terrell preceded the 1987 arrests in Tallahassee. It was the arrests of the two Finders men which spurred on a further investigation by the D.C. Metro Police, the U.S. Customs Agency, the Virginia State Police, and the FBI.
You have to have a little more background of what was happening in the culture at that time. There was a panic going on at that time. Now, what's going on now is that people are seeing a terrorist behind every bush. At that time, it was people were seeing child molesters behind every bush. There were many cases that got great publicity throughout the country. There was a whole industry that was built up around identifying child molesters, most of which amounted to nothing. There was a famous case out in Manhattan Beach in California that made national headlines for months. And finally, it all came down that it was all made up stuff that was put into the heads of these very young children. We were pioneers in trying to raise free children. And in order to do that, you have to be sort of clandestine, because if it looks like the children are not being raised in an orthodox fashion, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. And we certainly were not raising our children in orthodox fashion. We never gave them an order.
Here's my question, right? Why were they so disheveled looking when this whole situation first went under public intrigue? When the two men were picked up in Florida and there were 6 children, they looked disheveled. Why was that the case? Am I missing something here?
We gave them a level of freedom that children in this culture don't have. We raised them in a non-threatening environment in the country where they would be close to nature. And on occasion they would come into the city, so but most of the time was spent in the country, and so the police were aware of us. They couldn't figure out what we were doing. We'd bought this 10,000 square foot warehouse, and we would sometimes appear there in the middle of the night, and it just didn't fit any pattern. All concluded that we were filming pornographic stuff, which couldn't have been further from the truth, but that's what they concluded. And one reason that they concluded that was that we had some cameras and high-tech equipment. The high-tech equipment that you're referring to, this was way back before there was an internet. We were pioneers on the internet. It was called MCI Mail. It was the first email system.
Terrell dismisses the 1993 reports from U.S. News and World Report and reports filed by U.S. Customs Agent Raymond Martinez.
Well, I'm aware of that. that's what was published in U.S. News and World Report. Very poor investigators. They took the word of a guy who was discredited in the and had been fired for other reasons in the customs, and that was absolutely crazy, and he had no evidence for it. It was just something that he said. You know, if you're an investigator sent out to get information, you don't just say it, you get evidence. Well, his evidence was that he had seen some communication from Hong Kong saying something about buying children or some absurd thing like that. And that was his interpretation of a kind of communication that he knew nothing about. We had a couple of guys. By that time, we had evolved an organization that traveled around the world doing journalism. And we had two different people who worked for Hong Kong News doing freelance articles, usually high-tech articles. And they happened to be in Hong Kong when the whole thing came down. And we communicated back and forth. We developed a number of shortcut ways of communicating. So I have no idea what he read that led him to conclude that there was some kind of a kidnapping going on. But he did say that, and so it was picked up by U.S. News and World Report. It just so happened that I was working at U.S. News and World Report at the time. Very poor investigator.
As we have shown, former customs agent Raymond Martinez has stated that he stands by his reports. Terrell not only dismisses the child trafficking claims, but also initially dismisses the idea that Petty maintained any contact to the U.S. intelligence agencies after he left the military.
They offered him a chance to become an intelligence officer. He took it, and they trained him in Europe for some period of time. And then his time was up. His 20 years in the military was up. And he resigned from the military and started his spiritual practice.
As far as you know, did he maintain any of those intelligence contacts?
He severed all ties with the intelligence community. He had been trained, but he never was assigned. When his training was over, he flew back to Washington and approached General Ira Aker, who was then the Secretary of the Air Force. And he told General Aker that he had instructions to please give him his honorable discharge. And he was highly regarded by Aker. So Aker asked him why, and Petty said, "I'm sorry, it's so secret that I can't even tell you." And Aker gave him the discharge, and he then severed all connections with the military. And none of this, I mean, it's absurd to think that we had any connection with anything.
I think this interview is another part of why Tommy wanted us to watch this.
Governmental, we did not.
If I had to guess.
But is it possible that, you know, the games and the information that he was feeding the rest of the group were coming from somewhere else?
No, it's not possible. I mean, I shared the same toothbrush with this guy for 20 years. It's not possible. And you think about it.
Shit's nasty.
We were...
That's the biggest crime of this whole thing, dude.
Yeah, that's the worst
to the
part.
goals of the government and the intelligence community than you could possibly be.
Interestingly, members of the Finders are still connected to the intelligence field. This includes Kristen K. Noth, one of the mothers of the children involved in the 1987 Tallahassee incident. Noth has used several variations of her names over the years, including Kristen Noth and Kristen K. Noth. She has also written for various publications which discuss issues important to the intelligence community, including Knowledge Magazine and
What the fuck?
Foresight Alliance. Her LinkedIn page describes her as a futurist and qualitative analyst who has been deeply engaged with foresight practice and theory for more than 15 years. Eventually, Robert Terrell concedes that Petty was deeply connected to the intelligence community.
Did you ever see any evidence of Petty being tied to intelligence agencies? Because there are those who speculate, perhaps you're correct, perhaps the child trafficking claims, that was all exaggerated, it's part of the satanic moral panic of the 80s and that sort of thing. But there does seem to be some sort of indication that Petty was involved with intelligence services. Do you know anything about those claims, or did he ever share any of that information with you?
Oh, of course. He was in the Army Air Corps, which became, after World War II, the U.S. Air Force. And he was highly regarded by the brass. And they asked him if he would like to become an intelligence officer. So why would he want to be an intelligence officer? There's a lot like the intelligence service in being a meditator and practitioner of yoga. What is the goal of yoga and meditation? The goal is to discover in yourself a connection that is closer to the divinity than the human body. Getting in touch with that part of yourself, that deep part of yourself, is not unlike being an intelligence officer. An intelligence officer is living in a foreign culture. When you get deeply into meditation and yoga, what you're seeing around you is not what the average person sees. You know that you're not this human body, and that most of the people around you are confused, thinking that that's what they are, this temporary body that we've been given. And to pass that on to his followers, to think like an intelligence officer. And we did that. We thought of ourselves as not the CIA, but the DCIA, the Divine Central Intelligence Officer. And we were simply here on this planet gathering information that would be of use to mankind.
In the end, Terrell stands by his statements that the myths surrounding the Finders cult are simply rumors and conspiracy theories.
There's something called Occam's razor. Are you familiar with that philosophical concept? Yeah. Occam's razor says that the simple solution is usually the best solution. These elaborate myths that have come up online from conspiracy theorists are not simple solutions, and they make no sense to a rational person, particularly when there's no evidence of any of this stuff. There's no evidence of any of this conspiracy theory, and there's no motive of why we would be trying to help the very organization that we are trying to supplant. It doesn't matter to me whether people believe that foolishness or not. You know, I'm not trying to convince people to believe it or not believe it. If anything, I would simply say, smoke out these unconscious urges that were put there by getting you to play a role in the world rather than be yourself in the world. The training for the finders was to smoke out the unconscious neuroses, or whatever word you want to give them, to stop playing a part that was assigned to you by your culture and be yourself. That's dangerous. It was dangerous then, it's even more dangerous now.
Although Terrell denies any truth to the child trafficking and intelligence agency allegations, his statements in our interview confirm what was reported in the anonymous investigative lead's memo. As of 2019, no member of the finders or their children have come forward to voice complaints or admit involvement in child trafficking or sexual abuse, satanic worship, or intelligence activities. However, neither Terrell or Howell can explain why doctors with the Tallahassee Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services initially described signs of sexual abuse on two of the children.
That's my question.
Nor can they explain how Raymond Martinez could imagine such detailed evidence of an international trafficking ring, including the instructions on purchasing children and nude photos of the children. Once again, in order to believe the accounts of the finders, you must believe that Raymond Martinez imagined or faked his whole report and that the doctors mistakenly identified signs of sexual abuse, not to mention the various reports of a cover-up by the Central Intelligence Agency. So then, we must ask, who are the finders, and what exactly were they doing? Were they truly just an eccentric group of utopian futurists being led by a charismatic former military chauffeur? Was the finders a CIA front involved in international trafficking of children and potential blood rituals? If they were a CIA group gone rogue, at what point did they go rogue, and what did they do without the approval of the intelligence community? Or, as some have suggested, was this all one big game, one last prank from beyond the grave, courtesy of Marion D. Petty? These questions still remain unanswered. Marion Petty himself was probably operating under a NOC, a non-official cover where agents operate covertly without official ties to the intelligence community or government. If a NOC is caught violating the law, they are on their own and will not be rescued by their employer. Due to the constant moving around and the group constantly participating in games, it's possible that some members of the finders were ignorant to the intelligence activities of the group. However, it is clear that some members of the finders formed Marion Petty's inner circle and spent their time traveling internationally, likely using journalism as a cover for intelligence activities. If these activities did involve child trafficking, the evidence is long gone, having been hidden from the public since 1987. Our goal in making this film was to expose more people to the reality of corruption and cover-ups involving law enforcement and government agencies. We hope sharing this information can help shake loose the remaining truths about the actions of Marion Petty and the finders. Thank you for watching.
I can't believe we watched that entire fucking thing. But yeah, I mean, watching that doesn't really make me agree with Tommy's argument anymore. Like, I understand why he said the things he said, but I don't agree with him in the slightest. Like,
I understand where he was coming from now. But yeah.
But like, I feel like it's more like the old man was talking about it. He was saying like, oh, the simplest solution is the most correct most of the time. But like, to believe his side of the story, as the document said, you have to believe that like the fucking investigator was making everything up, the doctors were making everything up. So like, the simplest answer is that like something fucking happened for sure. Like, there's no doubt about it.
To
and
be
like,
fair to Tommy, he didn't discount that. He was just I think he was just a little like, put down the pitchforks. Let's look at this more. Let's be a little more reserved with how we go about this. You know, let's
let's not say like, oh, the government's like trying to cover everything up or whatever, have you.
I don't know.
Greatest theory. I really don't know what his point was. I guess he just didn't like. Yeah, raw data. That was kind of dumb.
That's like the new meme of the show.
Yeah, dude. Did everyone tweet at Tommy C raw data, dude?
Oh God.
But, yeah, I guess he just didn't like the way that Medicare talking about the situation. I don't know. I thought it was fine. Just finding out all this shit, talking about it, how ridiculous it is, how insane it is. It's crazy.
I mean, what disturbs me the most is if the mothers of those children did consent that they were really absorbed into this cult. Yeah, for real. There's a lot of disturbing, weird shit in that. I'm glad we listened to that. It's a little interesting.
I don't necessarily believe the satanic part of it. It seems like, I mean, all this shit could be happening and Satanism might not be the answer. Like, that just might be a label to put on it to, like, try and find an explanation to why this is all happening, but, I don't know, everything else seems pretty solid.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's all up to interpretation, but,
And with that, I think that's...
hopefully, the finders aren't active now, fucking torturing children now, because that'd be horrible. But.
That is strange, though. How nobody has come out, talked about this, who was associated with the group. You know? Because, you know, like my dad in particular is like really into, you know, like stories like this. And when we were talking about this, he was like, well, where are they now? And I was like, that's a good question. I mean, I don't really know.
Yeah, you'd think the children would want to like come out and talk about their experience at least, but I don't know.
All right. I think that's gonna about do it for tonight. We listened to that. We got it for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm glad we took a moment just to listen to that. Everyone who's here, I don't know why there's 500 in here. I think they might have put it into a little YouTube bot algorithm thing. So
yeah,
if you're here and you're a real person, if you enjoy that, like the show, we'll be on.
And if you're a real person, we're just not used to that views that we.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. All right.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe if you're interested to hear us talk about shit. Normally it isn't this dark. Normally we just talk about dumb YouTube drama, but this time, well, not all the YouTube drama is dumb, but it's a lot more lighthearted than this for sure.
I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. We'll see you guys tomorrow, Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Central. Tomorrow, yeah, we'll delve into some other shit. Hopefully it's not this deep. I did think it was important to cover this, and I'm glad people here were able to listen to this shit. Some crazy, fucked up shit going on. I'm gonna hop out of here. You guys have yourself a good night, and take care.
Okay, good night.
And you guys, man, stay away from those fucking finders, man. Oh, we gotta find. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.